Welcome back to the program. My name is Dr. Dan and I'm a pharmacist turned obesity expert. Saxenda. Now, you've probably heard me mention that name before, usually in the same breath as Wegovy and Mounjaro, but I've never really talked about Saxenda all on its own. And in fact, there's a lot of people out there who really kind of have mentioned it, but again, aren't really talking about it. But the reality of the matter is that Saxenda is the first generation GLP-1 receptor agonist that came out for obesity or weight loss management. Now, part of the reason why I think it doesn't get talked about much, at least anymore, is because we have the other guys on the market, such as Wegovy and Mounjaro, that are getting all the hype and getting people all excited. But we are going to do exactly that today, in that we're going to talk about Saxenda, some of the data it has in terms of weight loss and weight management. I mean, it is the first generation, so we got to talk about the first kid to the block. As well, given the whole shortage and thing that's happening around Wegovy and probably soon to be Mounjaro, well, a lot of people are getting switched over to it and it might be an option that you might be looking at. And how can you really make an informed decision as to whether Saxenda is the right drug for you if I haven't given it a proper review for you? So, let's get into it. Now, as always, before I give you the nitty-gritty details, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below so that you don't miss a notification when another video from me comes out. As well, check me out on my other channels at The Official Dr. Dan. I'm on the Tickety Talk, the Grammity Gram, the Tweety, the Tweeter. That didn't quite work out. But we're all on those at The Official Dr. Dan. You can also check out my website, healthevolved.co. O is in orange, and hey, if you're looking for some additional support on your weight management journey, you can book a consultation with myself there, and we can see if you're a good fit for our program. So what is Saxenda? Well, Saxenda is a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist, or for the sake of my voice and for the sake of your listening, it is a GLP-1 receptor agonist. And GLP-1 is a hormone that is naturally produced by the body. So what we're doing when we use Saxenda is we're essentially increasing the levels of the GLP-1 hormone in the body. We're putting in some extra, concentrating it, and basically increasing the effects that the GLP-1 hormone already naturally does. Now, I've talked about the mechanism of action of the GLP-1 medications before, but the broad sense, or the broad whatever, what have you, is that GLP-1 reduces our blood sugar levels, and it also acts within our brain to reduce our appetite and our food-seeking behaviors. The latter, as you can probably guess, is how it helps us in managing our weight. Now, the GLP-1s, they've been around for a while, first hitting the market in 2005, and now there's a whole bunch of them that are coming onto the market, and we're getting more and more as kind of the next generations of them come out. To give you a quick breakdown as to what I mean by generations, first generation is, well, the first kid that came out. The second generation is then the second kid, and as my mother has always told me, well, we tried to do better with the second one, and that's what we try to do in the drug world as well. We try to make a drug that is more effective, so it's more potent at what it does, and hopefully also has less side effects. The GLP-1 medications all originally came to the market primarily for the treatment of type 2 diabetes to help us manage blood sugars. However, it was noted that all these people that were getting their blood sugars under better control and managing their diabetes, they all happen to be losing weight too. It reminds me of the serendipitous story of how Viagra ultimately came to the market. You see, there was two fellas, Albert Wood, and yes, that is actually his last name, and Peter Dunn. And what these guys wanted to do was they wanted to create a medication that was going to help with things like chest pain and blood pressure and that sort. However, what they found was that Viagra, originally, the sildenafil is the generic name, wasn't all that effective at managing those things, but it was noted all of the men were kind of coming back and saying they were having better success with their wood-related problems when they were on the medication. And voila, we found that Viagra helped or created a side effect in the wood-related realm of things, and ultimately Viagra was born and brought to market for erectile dysfunction. In terms of Saxenda, perhaps you've heard of the drug Victoza. Victoza originally came to the market for treatment of diabetes at a dose of 1.8 milligrams once a day. And Victoza and Saxenda actually have the exact same generic molecule called Liraglutide. And Victoza was found to lead to weight loss at the 1.8 milligrams, so the drug company did some more studies. And hey, when we increase the dose of Victoza, in fact, when we increase it to 3 milligrams once daily, we get quite an effectiveness in terms of helping to manage weight, and Saxenda was born and brought to market. But enough about the semantics, let's get into the details of Saxenda. In particular, we are going to look at a trial called the SCALE trial. So what the SCALE study was, it was a large randomized controlled trial. In fact, they had about 3,700 participants, all of whom had obesity. And it looked at Saxenda being used for managing obesity, helping with weight loss, and compared it to a placebo. The authors of this study, as per generally most studies and research, classified obesity based on the BMI. And so obesity was considered if your BMI was greater than 30 or BMI was greater than 27, but the individual had a weight-related comorbidity such as hypertension, not diabetes, but some other condition that might be related to their weight, and so they would be included in the study. Now, they did exclude people that maybe had a previous bariatric surgery, so if they had a gastric sleeve or something like that, they weren't included. They were also excluding people that had previously been on weight loss medications or happened to be taking any medication that might lead to a significant weight gain or weight loss right out the gate. You can see in this lovely little graph right here was kind of the breakdown of the study. And as you can see, there was essentially two groups. Yes, there are technically 4 little lines there. They did do kind of a stratification of looking at people that had pre-diabetes. Not really important for our situation. It is technically important, but again, kind of a semantics and what we're going to go over here. Anywho, basically there was 2 main groups. There was the placebo group and there was the group that got Saxenda. And what they did in this trial is they've then followed these individuals either on placebo or the Saxenda for a period of 56 weeks. Now, a fun thing that I found about this study is that after the 56-week period, what they ended up doing is they did what's called a re-randomization. And so what they did is they took some of the people from the placebo, or I think it was just from the Saxenda group actually. They took those individuals and then they re-randomized them. So they then split them up to either continue on Saxenda or they got switched over to the placebo. And then they followed that group of individuals for another period of time. Largely what they were looking for was to see, is there any safety concerns if a person comes off of Saxenda abruptly? Did the person that came off of Saxenda, did they continue losing weight? Did their weight stay the same? What ultimately happened there? And similarly, they wanted to see what happened in the Saxenda group. Did they continue, or what was going on from that perspective? Obviously, these are all the things that we want to know. Now again, looking at this graph here, as you can see down at the bottom, there's a little line there. Everybody that was included in the study in both the Saxenda and the placebo group also received counseling on following a particular diet. In particular, everyone was put on what's called a 500 calorie per day deficit diet. So basically they were told to eat 500 calories less than what they were calculated to burn on a day-to-day. As well, they were recommended to become more active and that sort of thing. Pretty standard lifestyle things that we generally recommend when doing these trials with these medications. Anywho, let's get into the juicy stuff around the results. Again, another little graph. I like to do all the graphical representations today. Plus, the authors of this study had just some really clear-cut graphs that were easy to understand. And as you can see in graph number A here, we have the top line, which is the placebo, and the bottom line, which is the Saxenda group. And as expected, the group that was in the Saxenda group lost weight, and they maintained that weight loss over a 56-week period. On average, the people that were taking Saxenda lost 8% of their weight from baseline, or about 8.4 kilos, which comes out to be about 18.5 pounds over that 56-week period. The placebo group, on the other hand, in that gray line up there, only lost on average about 2.6% of their weight from baseline, or about 2.6 kilograms, which I think comes out to about 6 pounds or so, or maybe a little bit more than that. So obviously not nearly as much as what occurred in the Saxenda group. Nonetheless, the results of the placebo group here were not too shabby. I mean, it really does reinforce that the lifestyle interventions that were provided to the people in this study were adequate to still lead to some amount of weight loss, and that obviously did occur outside of what occurred in the Saxenda group. Ultimately, there was a weight loss difference between the two groups of about 5.4%. So the Saxenda group lost 5.4% more weight from baseline, or about 5.6 kilos or so, when compared to the placebo group. Now, as you can see in this little graph B right here, what was happening in graph B is that we got a breakdown of the number of individuals over the study period that lost 5%, 10%, and greater than 15% of their weight from baseline. And as you can see, a lot of people lost 5%, a few people lost 10%, and even fewer people lost 15%. But there was definitely some outliers in people there, both in the Saxenda group and the placebo group, that lost a considerable amount of weight. 15% of your weight from baseline is quite a bit. Generally, what we're aiming for is greater than 5% of your baseline body weight. We consider that to be clinically significant. Now, I have had some people in the past ask about, can you still lose weight even though you can't tolerate these drugs or what have you? And as you can see, yeah, even in the placebo group, in that group that lost greater than 15% of their baseline body weight, there was still a small little percentage of people that, yeah, they lost greater than 15% of their baseline weight. It was only about 3.5% of people, and it came out to be about like 43 people out of, whatever the 12 or 1700 number there is. And ultimately, it's still possible to lose weight without these medications, although it just is going to be a heck of a lot harder and may not be sustainable. And further, as an aside, using medications to help with managing your weight and managing your obesity does not mean you are a failure. It doesn't mean that you are weak. You do not need to lose weight naturally, as many people are saying these days. It is ultimately that obesity is a complex and chronic disease, and using a medication to help with your weight loss efforts is going to make that a little bit easier for you. And some of us are predisposed to gaining weight more easily and struggling with weight loss. And so if we can add something on to, make it a bit easier, why not? It's like me with my depression, anxiety, and ADD. I take medications for all of those. I could manage all of them without medications, but I'm trying this thing in 2023 where I kind of want to be like happy and stuff. So yeah, it's okay to take medications. Now, a couple of other findings that came out in the study that I just want to point out, depending on how observant you were of these graphs, in particular graph A at the top there, you might see there's an LOCF dot. And what the LOCF dot is considered the last observation carried forward. So, like any study, there's going to be a group of people that ultimately don't finish the study. And that could be for a variety of reasons, such as side effects, death, you name it, just for whatever reason. They weren't able to complete the full duration of the study, and so they ultimately dropped out. And so last observation carried forward, what we essentially did is we took their last observation or their last weigh-in, even if they only weighed in once, and we carry it forward and assume that last observation that we had them for was going to be their final result no matter what group they were in. And as you can see, the LOCF in both groups is a smidge bit higher. Now, the results that I presented up there previously of the 8% with Saxenda and 2 point something percent with placebo were the LOCF results. And as you'd expect, if we're including people that dropped out or didn't complete the entirety of the study, well, yeah, the LOCF dots are not going to look as good as what's the dot at the end of the pretty lines there. But ultimately, these LOCF dots are more realistic of what is going to happen in real life with real people when they're not in a perfect trial environment. However, if you happen to be in a very supportive clinical environment or what have you, this also shows that you could get even better results with Saxenda, so even more weight loss beyond the 8% if you are working with, say, an amazing coach like myself. And so that weight loss might be closer to 9, 10, who knows how much percent it could be, but working with someone like myself, wink, wink, and nudge, nudge, I think I was supposed to just mimic those and not actually say them out loud, but working with someone like me can certainly help with that process. And so if you would like to, you can check out the link down in the description below and you can book a consultation with myself to see if you'd be a good fit for our program. Now, for some other honorable mentions in terms of the data and the results, there was some people that did see a significant improvement in their cholesterol or lipid levels. Definitely, we obviously saw improvements in blood sugars, blood pressure, and on and on and on. What about the side effects? And at this point, you should be seeing a whole graph right now. That's another very pretty one that's kind of taken up the screen just because it's easier for you to just have it blown up here. But as you can see, we have the placebo group with the kind of white clear dots, and then we have the Saxenda group, which is the bluish purplish dots. And as you can see, it's they're all having about the same amount of side effects between the two groups, and then it peaks out with more people experiencing side effects in the Saxenda group. As per usual, that comes with the GLP-1 receptor agonist. A lot of people were experiencing mostly gastrointestinal type side effects, so things like nausea, diarrhea, possibly constipation, in some rare instances, maybe some vomiting. Now, most of these effects occurred within the first 4 to 8 weeks and eventually resolved as their bodies became used to the medication. If you happen to be taking Saxenda or any other GLP-1, you can check out the variety of links down below where I have done full videos on the variety of different side effects that can occur and how you can ultimately manage them. As for the other big scary side effects that a lot of people are concerned about, looking at, say, pancreatitis definitely did occur more frequently in the group that were taking Saxenda. However, there was a bit of a confounder there, it looks like, in that the people that were experiencing pancreatitis in the Saxenda group were also having some issues with their gallbladder. In particular, they were experiencing some gallstones, which we know can certainly happen with these medications when people lose weight relatively rapidly. And so a lot of people did get some, or not a lot, but some people got some pancreatitis, but it looks like it was primarily linked to their gallbladder being irritated, which ultimately pisses off the pancreas and can lead to pancreatitis. So there is still some small risk that the drug, Saxenda, Ozempic, Wegovy, you name it, could cause possible pancreatitis. It's going to vary person to person. There's often other confounders and stuff. Again, check out my other videos where I go over it in detail to kind of give you the bit of the breakdown. As for the rates of cancer, they occurred at a similar rate to the placebo and really were non-issue. I think it was less than 0.2% of people across the study experienced a cancer. So it looks like, and still is the case, where these drugs really don't increase the risk of thyroid cancer in particular. However, always talk to your doctor first before starting these because there is the black box warning. Again, if you are concerned, check out my other video where I go over it in detail and give you the full rundown to help alleviate some of your concerns. All right, that is the main data. That is the side effects. Now for the grand finale of what happened in that final 12 weeks. So in that final 12 weeks, we had the group of people that stayed on Saxenda and we had the group of people that were switched to placebo. Both groups did gain some weight. However, the Saxenda group gained like a very smidge of weight, only about 0.69% from their wherever they got to and back up a little bit. whereas the placebo group people gained about 2.9% of their baseline weight back. In terms of long-term maintenance, yeah, we might need to stay on these medications for life in a lot of senses, because when people come off of them, they tend to start increasing their food intake, their caloric intake, and reverting back to some of their old patterns and behaviors, and that ultimately can lead to weight regain. However, if for whatever reason you need to come off this medication abruptly or otherwise, there was no adverse effects or issues noted. So in conclusion, overall, this was a pretty well done study, pretty standard for the most part in terms of clinical trials. There was no real major red flags that I saw, and overall the results were not too shabby. Maybe not as effective as, say, Wegovy and what we're seeing with Mounjaro and stuff, but getting an 8% weight loss on average is pretty decent. I mean, greater than 5%, again, is clinically significant, and these results match up pretty well with what I see in practice of about 8 to 10% weight loss from baseline. Of course, there's going to be outliers, and of course, you are going to need to engage into lifestyle modifications as well in order to promote weight loss, further weight loss, and weight maintenance. The side effects, pretty standard from the GI perspective. Again, no real major concerns or anything of a red herring was popping out by any means. So overall, it was a well done study and some decent results. If, say, you're not tolerating Ozempic and you need another option, or maybe you need to be switched from Wegovy to Saxenda, or you're just looking to start out on a weight management medication and you can't get access to Mounjaro or Wegovy because of the shortages, Saxenda may be a great option for you. Otherwise, you beautiful people, that is it for me today. As always, don't forget to hit the subscription button down below so you don't miss another episode. And again, check me out on my other channels at The Official Dr. Dan. I'm on the Tickety, Talkety, Grammity, Gram, Bookety, Bookety, and Tweety, Twittering, Tweety. That was a little better, but not quite there. So check me out there at The Official Dr. Dan, and also check out my website, healthevolved.co. Again, healthevolved.co. O is in orange, and you can book a consultation with myself to see if you're a good fit for our program. Whether you're on medication or not, we certainly could support you. And as always, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, drop them down below. And until next time, you beautiful people, always remember, small tweaks lead to massive peaks.